Hello. Happy Thursday, guys. Thursday. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Druid. I can't believe it's Thursday. I say that every week, don't I? um, so today snuck up on me a little bit. It's been a busy week, and it's already May 7th. And I'm working on a couple things they haven't been announced. So, oh, hey, Kate, lurking and sorting books. Perfect. I'm working on something that hasn't been announced yet, so I can't give you specifics, but it's coming up soon, and I'm like, I'm sort of in panic mode because I've put a significant amount of work into it, but I'm kind of waiting on some other people, and yeah, I just get super panicky on timelines. It's kind of crazy. And I was just thinking as I was waiting for I wait for that first commercial so that I know people have gotten the announcement that I'm on. So time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. I love it. Okay, that's my new one. I've always been you could tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. Oh, okay, gotcha marks. Yeah, I love those kind of like dad jokey things. I feel like everything Groucho Marx said was like a dad jokey thing. But anyway, as I was waiting for the commercial to play, I thought to myself, like, okay, it's May 7th. April 7th feels like it was yesterday. March 7th feels like it was yesterday. February 7th feels like it was last week. Now, January 7th does feel like it was a while ago. Like, what? Oh my goodness, this year. And I think people talk about that a lot. I hear that, a lot of people say time just goes by so fast. And I remember having this conversation with my grandmother, probably been about 10 years ago. Well, it had to have been about 10 years ago, where, I joked about, or not even joked, I was kind of saying like, oh my gosh, time's going by too fast. Like my child is growing up and, all these things. And she's like, you're only in your 40s and you feel like time is going by fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, far more than, when I was in my 20s or whatever. And she's like, I'm almost 90. What do you think it's like for me? And I was like, oh my gosh, good point. And I actually did look into like the science of it some time ago, and then I've seen some articles that have come out about it. But the reason why I think, particularly during the pandemic, that people looked at this a lot, like kind of scientifically, like why do we feel like time flies? Time slows down and contracts or speeds up, and depending on what we're doing and how we interpret our world. And so time goes by very slowly for children. If you can imagine, I mean, I very clearly remember as a child, like summer break would stretch out forever in front of me. And, and then when school would start, it was like, oh, you're just waiting for the next thing. Like you're waiting for Christmas break and then you're waiting for spring break. And those things take forever to get there, or, you've been dragged somewhere by your mother and you have to, you're told you're going to have to wait an hour and you're like, oh my gosh, days have gone by. And it's because our brains as children are constantly like bringing in new information and processing it, and it feels to us like, you know, a long, there's just a long time because we're, you know, we're moving quickly in our brain. And for adults, like we've processed a lot. We already, you know, not so much in our days is very novel. And so, you know, when you're just kind of applied, and this is where it connects to like the you know, how things were with during COVID, and even how things are still for people today. That time just clicks by because you don't necessarily have new things coming up um, to sort of arrest your attention and make you learn new things, or make you kind of, you know, some novelty, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And somehow or another, that makes our brain feel like time is just going by. No days are different. It's just sort of speeding past you. And it's really weird to me. I mean, to think like it's almost counterintuitive, I feel like when every day is the same and there's not much different, you know, like wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep, you know, you would think like that would stretch out forever. But it's actually the opposite. And I think that's so strange. Certainly when we are in deep into something that we love, or are in a this really sweet spot with how we're learning. This is flow, and I think I've you guys may remember, but I talked about flow a long time ago. I think I even did like a little flow workshop or lecture kind of thing here. And time goes by. Time also contracts and expands based on your flow state. So you know, when you're in a highly enjoyable situation, like time can go by, massive amounts of time can go by, and it feels like it's just been nothing. Um, you know, so and you know, and vice versa, obviously, when we're in a non-enjoyable situation, every second feels like it's an eternity. So it's really interesting, you know, like we all are given the same amount of time. Like nobody gets an extra, well, unless somebody out there has ripped the space-time continuum and, you know, we don't know about it. Nothing would surprise me these days. But, you know, we are all, you know, rich, poor, young, old, we all have the same 24 hours. Sorry, move my yogurt and there was some left. So that's always something interesting to think about. Time is such an important resource to all of us. Um, you know, time enough to do the things you need to do, time to spend with people you love and care about, time to learn the things you need to learn. You know, just time to accomplish all the things. Uh, they all have that same 24 hours, that same 7 days a week. And I would say that, um, you know, people that have more resources, maybe more education, can use their time differently. Um, and, you know, and I guess that's kind of where maybe things start to become, I don't know, unfair, you know, unbalanced. But it's one of those resources that you can't exploit it. You can't change it. And um, yeah, I think about that a lot. I don't know that I necessarily have anything poignant to say or anything mind blowing to say about that. It's just something that I think about a lot because I feel like you know, time, I never have enough of it. Never. So anyway, speaking of time and crafting, you know, I have been busy this week. I've done many things. I've had lots of meetings. I've sort of had lots of moments of having to use my brain, but my hands were needed fulfilling. And so I've gotten some things done. So one thing I am very proud of, I have to show, I finished all of my half square triangles from my Liberty neon. And you can see this is how big the stack ends up being when it's they've been sewn to it's some Kona snow, and so it kind of gets, it's thicker because the Kona is heavier. And so I'm excited about this to have, you know, I have this, like, this is the raw material now, like what am I going to make with this? I need to lay them out and figure out what I'm going to do, because there were 2 of each 5-inch square, you know, of each pattern. And when you do obviously the half square triangle, then you end up with 4 of them because you've cut 2 into half. Um, so, and I did these, most of the reason why these came by very quickly, even though I hand pieced them, is because I did the 2 at a time method. And I think that this is probably 99% of people that quilt, so like, know how to do the 2 at a time method. But in case you don't, hopefully you can see this. Get in front of the camera here. You can see this is a 5-inch square and I have a big thread on it. But it's got 3 pencil lines. There's one from point to point, and then there's a line 1/4 of an inch on either side of that. And what I've done is I've made, you know, as many of these as there were of the Liberty blocks, the Liberty squares. And then you just layer it. And this is the back of the fabric with the marks on it. And then you stitch on both of those 1/4 inch lines. And then you can use a rotary cutter. I just use scissors. Whip out the scissors and then cut from point to point in that middle line. And then you just press them open. So, and if you use a sewing machine, it goes really fast. So, I think I will probably, even though I did this as hand piecing, I will probably assemble this in whatever way is assembled. I will probably do it with a machine because things, once you get into big and bulky, I don't like hand sewing very long seams. So, and they can get funky. So I'm probably going to drag the sewing machine out. So the other thing, obviously, that I've spent time on that I'm going to talk about today are the Jonathan Adler kits. I feel like I've had some epiphanies. Very interesting stuff. Before that, though, I was running up and down the stairs today, just doing some quick things this morning. And I had mentioned when I showed you guys pictures from the Sheep and Wool Festival, I went to over the weekend. One of the pictures was a woman shearing a sheep with like the old-fashioned cutters. Well, I caught sight of my cutters as I was coming down the stairs. They were sitting in a easy to see space, so I thought I would show them off. And you can see they're kind of wicked looking. And this is the way my mind thinks because I am so true crime connected. I always think, okay, if somebody breaks into my house, if I have a home invasion, where are the things I would use as, to protect myself? Obviously, bringing sheep shears to a gunfight I'm probably not going to be on the winning side. But if I did have to, protect myself in hand-to-hand combat, I feel like the sheep shears would win. And I hadn't really given much thought to these, like, ever. I have them because they were a fun and cheap antique purchase. And they're rusty, and I realized just looking at them, they used to be kind of this sort of steel blue color, I think, kind of a grayish blue. You can see kind of on the inside of the arms, you can see the old paint. And I thought, these are just old rusty. They don't work, do they? Well. As a matter of fact, these babies work really well. A tendon about to snap right there. Yeah, I mean, look at this. That's crazy. I mean, these are good. And then I thought, as I was, again, what if I sheared myself? I already got that braid. As a matter of fact, these could still shear sheep. Right? A unmaker. It is the same. Yes, tetanus and stabbing. So surprisingly, I mean, I think I would never torture a sheep with these myself, but I bet if these with a little bit of cleanup and sharpening, these are still like ready to shear a sheep, so they will go back in my hallway near the front door. They were just, I have like an old general store scale that was from my grandmother's house and it hangs from the ceiling, and I had these just sitting in there, so they will be handy. I don't live in a bad neighborhood. I mean, I live on a busy road, but I've never felt particularly threatened in my home, but one never knows. We also have a baseball bat by the door. But yeah, and again, like look, the blades are, they're not sharp like scissors. Like you can't like really, cut yourself like that. But the scissor motion of these it is fierce. Yeah. I love old tools too. And I think that, looking at this, my gosh. I can't imagine, this being relevant today, but it is. I mean, I saw a lady using them this past weekend. They looked exactly like this. They were, I'm sure, newer and in much better condition, but yeah, got a lot to be said for the old tools. And I have to say, like, my own toolbox is generally full of, I mean, I've bought for special needs, I've bought tools throughout the years, but I still have like my grandfather's ball peen hammer and um stuff my dad had that was probably my grandfather's also, my other grandfather. So old tools are good. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for old tools and like, you know, getting rid of power tools. Do it by hand. Okay. So this is the other thing I've been working on. So let's see. I showed a little piece of this off the other day on Tuesday, and Jill's in my stream. We're reading the Commemorative American Quilts book, and this is obviously Bicentennial Quilt. I kind of talked about this. The stars at the top were already sewn on when I got it, and this whole centerpiece was already assembled. But I have been sewing these stars on the side. Was the first complete one I did, Georgia, and I'm now working on Connecticut. So it's going quickly, probably, sit down, takes about an hour to sew around. Maybe not even an hour. I sometimes am slow because I stop and start and do other things. So in any event, I'm super excited about this because I think I mean, there's some problems with it. There's some things I'm gonna have to sort of fudge and fix, but I've ordered fabric to go, for the outer borders. I found, I'm pretty sure is this Bicentennial blue. I need to hunt down some of the red maybe. And then I think I showed you guys, I'm pretty sure, the Mary Inglebright fabric, right? That I got a couple of yards of the different, several of her different patterns. And so I think this is going to be the one. I think it looks pretty good. It's going to be like the final outer border. I probably have enough. I mean, I want to cut it directionally, obviously, so that, the stripes go a particular way of the little flowers, but I might have to order more. But I might be able to get away with this. We'll see. So then there's that. And then there's the Jonathan Adler kits. So let's look at those. Yesterday I did diamond art bookmark painting, diamond art bookmark making. I guess I had kind of dismissed a diamond art as it's like cross stitch / paint by numbers, and even though I think the images are pretty, just like cross stitch, it's just, not my jam. Now, I don't know that I will ever get heavy duty into this, but I can tell you, much like just knitting, just a straight old, stockinette stitch, this was pretty relaxing. I was actually able to. I had to listen to a webinar meeting kind of thing that I had missed because I wasn't able to go, and so I had to listen to the recording. And ordinarily I would have been sewing, but I was like, oh well, I can do this. And yeah, it's one of those things, like, it takes a little bit of precision. You kind of have to get the hang of it, but I can't say I didn't enjoy it. So I will save the other three. I did the one, and I don't know if you can really even see the diamondiness of it. This is just the plexiglass, or I mean, it's a little thinner. I guess it's an acrylic sheet. It's a little thinner than like plexi, but now it took me, I don't know, couple hours. Um, Now, one thing that I know, our friend Betsy was here. I don't know if she's here today, but she mentioned that she's done this diamond art, and that she knows like the Michaels kits, like their homegrown kits are cheaper than this. And now I kind of see, having done it now, I see like if you're gonna pay, you know, $20, say, for a kit to make a image, um or piece, you get a lot more for your $20. And I think this was like, I think 16.99 is like the price on this, and I paid less than that because I had a discount code. But um, I could see like paying full price on this, $17 for these three little bookmarks. That's not much. It's not much area square. It's not much square footage. Like, this is it, and if you were to buy like a full blown Betsy. It's how it starts. You get a small kit and then it takes over your house. Well, I don't know anything about that, and quilting, knitting, punch needle, all the other 1,000 crafts. So yes, I'm in the stage of, I will do the crafts and try them out so you don't have to. But so, like what you were saying, Betsy, about, this maybe not being a very good deal, for the price. I I gotcha. I see why, what you meant now. Um, the other thing about these, and this is, also kind of like where I look at cross stitch, like, ugh, gets me. I've told you guys many times, I have so much respect for the cross stitchers who can finish a project and it looks good and isn't like all like, because I cannot count to save my life. Thank goodness this had little cues on the sticky part, so I could see like, okay, I know I'm going the right direction with these, to make the little shapes and stuff. Um, but I do use a lot of bookmarks because I bookmark things in books. This is not useful for that because, I mean, again, look at, it's got a little bit of girth to it. It's a very thin piece of acrylic or plexi, um, but try to put it in a book, put this in a book, and the book is not going to lay flat. And I could see, I mean, obviously, the little diamonds are faceted. So it would kind of press into the paper of your book. So I don't know. I don't see anybody actually using these as bookmarks. I feel like they're more of a display item. So, that's where I'm at with these. If it's something that you could frame and, you wanted to take the time, and it's, again, it's very soothing. You get, so to sort of give you an idea, if you're not familiar with this at all, you have your little package of all of these different little diamond things. I mean, they look like a tiny little, like a little rhinestone, sort of. Yeah, miniature art. I thought about that. I thought, I bet I'm gonna have leftovers of this, and I'm thinking, I have some double-sided like sticky stuff. I could make some little miniature things with this. I definitely have that in the back of my mind. But anyway, so you get these little packages of these, and then they give you little baggies to put them in once you open the little packages. So I was like, oh, that's nice. And there's a little chart for the colors, and I realized some of the colors are exactly the same. They give you two separate packs, and it doesn't make sense, like with the volume of the little things in there. And I guess they sort of, I don't know. I guess they separated it out because there's three different little substrates. I don't know. But in any event, you dump one of these out into this little sorter. I don't know if you can see. It's got little ridges in it. And it also is open on this end. It's like it's almost like a little funnel, so that when you're done, get it back in there. You can get these for bead stuff, like jewelry making / bead weaving, whatever. This, you could get bigger ones, and I'm sure there's bigger ones for diamond art too. So anyway, you put those in there and you kind of do a little shuffle, and they will start to line up along the little grooves. And then you have this little doodad. Again, also probably some of the nicer kits or the bigger kits maybe have, there's probably something a little more substantial available. To me, this looks like, it looks like a pen, like the tube part of a pen that they've taken apart. And it has this little itty bitty, where's my camera? It has this little itty bitty thing here on the tip. It's like a little brass, like ferrule, um, and it's hollow. And you get this little pot of wax. It's like a microcrystalline wax. It's interesting because it's back when I was in college, um, jewelry making, we would use these microcrystalline waxes. And this one's a very soft one. Um, to do modeling and stuff. So anyway, you're supposed to kind of scoop up some wax with this thing. So there's a little gob of wax inside this little ferrule. Oh, the diamonds are called drills. Interesting. I had not heard that. I think in these instructions, well, let's see what they say in the instructions. And I will be honest, I only sort of looked at the instructions. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're calling them gems. So, yeah, isn't it interesting, like, that the terminology that comes along with any kind of craft? It's so interesting. So anyway, yeah, this, oh, it it says wash hands before working. That would have been important because, and I assume this is how, the diamond art works. The part that has sort of your little pattern on it, you peel this plastic off and it's sticky. It's like there's a layer of this like super, super sticky stuff. Well, once you start working on it, like the sticky stuff is sticking. If you touch it, it's sticky. So I can see why you'd like not want to have, you want to have clean hands. You want to have any like dust or, oil hand, like lotion. I could see that would be a problem on this because with this, you want this to remain sticky until you get your little gems laid out. And basically what you're taking this little stylus with this little gob Cheeto dust, right? Exactly. With this little, this little brass thing on the end that's got a gob of wax in it. And then you've got your little tray and you kind of give it a shake to get them to line up. And then you're literally like, you pick one up and you put it down. You pick one up and you put it down. And you get in that rhythm when you're doing, like when I was doing the white, there's a lot of space here to fill with the white gems. I just got in this like rhythm and, it's one of those things like you're kind of, your hands are in flow. Your doing is in flow. But my brain is elsewhere because I was listening to something. So this always reminds me. I take when it's things like this where you're not having to necessarily read a pattern because it's right there for you visually. And like the same thing with knitting. I really put this in the same for me, the same category as knitting because there's knitting where you're doing something that's like say a sock where you have like pretty rapid changes, because you only knit so far in a sock and then you got to if you're going from the cuff down, you get to a point you got to do the heel. And it's pretty fast if you are a proficient knitter. But when I think about just the type of knitting I've done just as like kind of a soothing, calming is like yards and yards of like stockinette or garter or ribbing. It just, you get in this like rhythm and your hands just know what to do. And so then your brain can work on other things. And very early in my career, I worked for, it was the first company I ever worked for, a startup that I worked for. And one of our sales guys, I could see his desk from my desk. And sometimes I would just kind of sit and like watch and see what he was doing. And he would sit there, no lie, he had a headset, with the mic. And he would sit there kicked back at his desk, put his feet up on the corner, and he would be playing solitaire on his computer while he was on a sales call. And I was always like, Carmen, how do you do that? Like, and why? That's crazy. And he was like, well, and I think he also suffered a little bit from ADD, but he was like, well, I keep my this one part of my brain busy doing solitaire And then this like salesy, this hardcore sales part of my brain can just go into overdrive and talk to the client. And he's like, I separate those two parts of my brain and they don't fight with each other because they both have a job. And I remember thinking like, huh, that's interesting. And you know, and I mean, this is before 9/11. This is probably early 2000, so more than 25 years ago. And since then, I have read more about this, you know, this kind of stuff, and it is true. Um, you can multitask if you have distinct jobs for parts of your brain. So, example, you can be sorting books while you lurk and listen to me. You can be washing dishes while you listen to an audiobook. You know, I could be paying attention to a webinar that I didn't have to have my eyes on the whole time. You know, I just had to look up every now and then. It was mostly listening though. And then, you know, I could do this, you know, this very methodical like, craft. So I think there's a lot of value in stuff like this. I guess my challenge is I I like my crafts to be useful in my life or useful to somebody else. So if I were to say find some diamond art, or and you know, I think I told you guys with cross stitch, I did a swapsy with somebody. I was like, I will make you something quilted if you do the cross stitch for me. But if I saw something like a diamond art image that it would just be perfect for like a friend or family member, and it would make a great birthday present or Christmas present or something like that, yeah, I would go there. I would do it. Um, but you know, for the most part, this is decorative. You're going to create an image, just like cross stitch. It's an image that, you know, can be framed and displayed. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have room on my walls. I don't have room for stuff. So, you know, to me, it's not going to result in something that's useful to me. And, you know, I mean, maybe I will find a friend or family member that is dying for some Jonathan Adler design and they will get these. um, but yeah, I think for me, this would be kind of like just a soothing craft. And not necessarily like, you know, I'm going to make this thing very specific, useful item like a sweater or a quilt or something. So, but I would say I'm going to give this like a B. I'll give it a B because I think it was interesting. It was, I don't want to say fun. It's not a fun craft. um, I don't, you know, honestly, I think anything that you really you know care about and try to be very meticulous and like high quality, high functioning type of skills at is not fun. But if it's something that you like and you care about, that you know that gives you the drive to do it. um yeah, I mean, I think this was interesting, and I could see where this could be the gateway to, you know, getting into this. So I give this one a B. As far as the quality of the materials, I think that probably a better stylus, this is what they call this, a stylus with the, I just think like this little thing on the end, like it wouldn't, the wax wouldn't stay on it. It kept like coming out and I had a hard time scooping it up. I don't know if I did it right and trying to get the wax in there. But, you know, I think the gems are probably the drills. I think they are probably the same thing that you would get, you know, if you went and bought like a Michaels branded kit. So, um, yeah, I give it a B. Now, I'm 99% sure I showed you guys on Monday the punch needle project. I haven't touched it since then, but this side is done. And, you know, I feel good about it. I think it wasn't, you know, it has a learning curve, maybe a little bit more of a learning curve than this. It also has that sort of methodical, you can listen to a podcast or an audiobook while you're doing this. You have to pay a little bit, yeah, well, I don't know. I think it's about the same amount. You have to pay about the same amount of attention in terms of being, you know, methodical and careful. You know, you don't want to just like be jabbing this thing all over the place. You don't want to be sticking gems down all over the place. You know, you want to be methodical and have it be in the right place. So kind of the same thing, but I don't know why. I really enjoyed this. And I can't wait to finish this one. And in fact, I'm going to deviate from the instructions and the materials, and I'm going to put my own lining. I have some velveteen, some hot pink velveteen fabric that I'm going to line this with so that, for glasses to slip in there. So I think that some of the materials in this one could be a little better. I realized the death grip that I had on the punch, my arm hurt. So from and it also could be like I should have rested more. This is one of those things, and probably not so much with the diamond art, because I feel like, that's like a different kind of like putting in place thing. This is very, very repetitive stress. So if you were to take up punch needle, you definitely need to rest while you do it, because it is really easy to fall into the hole of like don't like for an hour straight and realize like, oh, not good for your body. So I will be finishing this. You will see the finished item. And I think overall both of these, the instructions were pretty good. I always try to like put my head in like the head of a beginner that has maybe never walked into a craft store and has never worked with like whatever craft supplies. As I feel like anybody who grew up in the United States and went to a public school, at least during elementary school, has some experience with some tiny bit of crafting. You've used glue and you've used scissors, and I feel like you have like the fundamentals, right? I think anybody that has like at least that much in their skill set could walk in and do at least these two crafts. Might take some, fidgeting around, fixing things maybe. I definitely I pulled out some of my punch needle and sort of had to kind of give the background fabric a little bit of like a, sort of scratch it a little bit to get the threads lined up again, the warp threads lined up again, or weft threads, which however it was oriented. But yeah, I think these are all things that sort of from an entry level crafting standpoint, I think are good. Now, let's talk about the others. I've spent a lot of time on these. And I definitely want to get to the others because I feel differently about them. This was a pleasant surprise, so I'll say that. Oh, and before I forget, Druid said Cheeto dust. What I have to say is, Betsy, if you're still listening, what the heck do you do about the kind of still sticky edges? And this may be very specific to this project, because again, I kind of am assuming most of the time when you do this, it then maybe goes in a frame or some type of mount to like hang it on the wall, or maybe I noticed that the Jonathan Adler stuff, there was like trays, like sort of like drink trays that you could do this with, and I assume like maybe there was a top on it or something, but there is a little bit of stickiness on the edge here, and I could see like if you were to put this in a book, dust and stuff could get in there, I guess. Because the gems are sort of pushed up against each other, but not perfectly, so that stickiness, I don't know what do you do about that? It's not terrible, but it's there. So I mean, that's just I guess the way the craft is. So all right, put this one away, and I'd already showed you guys the fiber art kit that is in this bazooka sized tube. The reason why it's so big, some people seal them. I didn't even think about that. Like a clear coat, I guess, like a spray coat. That makes sense because that would cover up the sticky. I kind of wondered, is there some kind of like invisible, like some like powder you brush on it? Because it almost reminded me, I did mosaics for a while back in the day. Actually, I had a little company where I made and sold mosaics. Yes, like grout. And that's almost what it reminded me of. I was like, oh, I need something like a grout to get in there. Yeah, I think anything that it would be exposed, that makes sense to spray something. or put some kind of thing, yeah. Ooh, mica powder. Now that would be interesting. That would be very glitzy. I think I have some of those, like from my paper crafting days. I have to go dig around in my closet and see if I still have some of those powders. I wonder what that would look like. Yeah, I bet if you just kind of lightly brushed it in there, it covers up the sticky. I'm gonna try that. All right. So this is what's in here. And this is called an OG design. So OGEE. It's that onion shape. Was very popular in like the 60s and 70s. Also, I think mid-century. I think, we kind of got this mid-century, it was mid-century, but definitely in the 60s and 70s, you see a lot of this kind of thing. So the reason why it's in such a big bin or this thing is the stretcher bars or the frame. This is the frame. It's untreated wood, raw wood. So first of all, I would paint this because I don't think that this looks like a canvas stretcher. It doesn't look like a frame. I mean, and that is essentially what it is. It's a canvas stretcher. So yeah, I would paint this. I don't think it would look very good raw, although that's what they show doing with it. And then this is the canvas. Now, when I saw this online and I bought it, I'm thinking, it's just going to be like a big needlepoint situation. And it sure looks like it, doesn't it? But what we have here is not traditional needlepoint canvas, but rather a plastic canvas. And so it looks woven, but it is not. It is actually like pressed. You can definitely tell it looks like a needlepoint canvas, but it is plastic. It has been pressed. Which, I don't know. I'm neither here nor there on this. It is a finer weave than I expected. And again, I'm thinking of needlepoint. I'm going, oh, that's an awfully tiny weave. Well, then I look at the threads and I'm like, okay, the threads are they're lightweight too. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I wonder what the stitches are. Is it just all the traditional, with needlepoint, I think, it's either queen stitch or tent stitch. I think those are both stitches that are used in needlepoint. But essentially, if you think about just like the little cross hatch, like one side of a cross stitch, so just one of them. I mean, that's kind of what a lot of needlepoint is. And here are the threads, and much like the punch needle, they're the same threads for the punch needle. They are a very lightweight acrylic, which, I go back to the fact, of course, I would prefer wool. But, for the price point, you couldn't buy this much needlepoint yarn. This would be so expensive if this was all wool. And you've literally got this nicely carded, and then you have all of these other hanks. They basically like just dumped some hanks. And I'm like, why couldn't you just have done 2 cards? That would be nice, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have to untangle all of these, but that's what they did. So, but this isn't bad. This is kind of what you expect, with a needlepoint thing. And then, it's got 2 needlepoint needles, and then 2 needle threaders in here. Okay. And now we have our instructions. Forget the French. And I realized, I looked at this and I'm like, oh, okay. So the instructions here are not for like traditional needlepoint, like a surface fill needlepoint, but rather, I feel like you can see this. They're showing where you're doing these long stitches. And actually what this reminds me of, I believe it's, oh gosh, is it Kitsuge? There's a type of Japanese sort of needlepoint that kind of goes in the family of like sashiko, boro and stuff, but it's for making, you know, images or oh gosh, how to describe it? It's kind of, I feel like it's a mashup of a whole bunch of other types of textile methods, techniques that, you know, we might be familiar with. A little bit like huck towel or towel hucking, if you're familiar with that. That's a Swedish. Um, the fabric that is used is very similar. But so you may or may not be familiar with what I'm talking about. But essentially, it's like a long, you know, you're floating your needlepoint threads across the canvas. You know, instead of taking all of these little stitches, it's just like a long floats. And that's what this reminds me of. And so I was like, oh, well, okay. You know, honestly, that's probably better, you know, especially for an entry level. To me, I think, you know, this would be really daunting if I was brand new to crafting and I got this and was like, I have to fill all of this in. Oh my gosh. Okay. So filling each of these OGs becomes different when you're doing like a long stitch, right? So I'm like, okay, I can get with that. I understand. But then I keep reading and I'm like, excuse me? They do not have you filling in the white parts. So all of the white parts on this canvas are to be left unstitched. And I'm not happy about that. I mean, I can get with using the long stitches. I see where that could be very pretty. Yeah, kind of like Bargello. Yeah. Yeah. But they have it going in different directions. Like with Bargello, it's like you're kind of, there's a directionality to it, like a flame stitch. This has you going kind of in these different directions. You make these big crosses and then you're kind of going out in different directions with these long stitches. And then they literally say, leave blank areas as they are. Do not embroider any color in these sections. So all of the white goes unstitched. And I'm like, oh, no, thank you. I don't love that. Because that looks half done. You know, I feel like it looks like, oh, you didn't finish. You didn't have any white yarn or whatever. So out of my stash, I had some, this was some acrylic yarn that I got. I think I was going to knit a baby sweater or something. And never did. I have some wool yarns that are probably the exact same weight as this. This is a little bit lighter, I would say. This is like close to a lace making weight yarn. Whereas this is like, you know, a baby, what are they? Is it DK? Like a DK baby weight. It's a little bit bit thicker. Than lace yarn. So I don't know if this would necessarily work. I'm gonna have to try it, but I will be filling in the white spaces of this. So besides that, I don't love the frame and I don't love the fact that you don't, you know, fill it in. They do say to paint the frame using your favorite acrylic paint, your preferred acrylic paint, ensuring the coverage is full and consistent. Like, okay, thank you. And they tell you to use push thumbtacks to secure the canvas on the back of the frame. And I guess my challenge there, if you've ever done like needlepoint, like full blown needlepoint or cross stitch kind of would fall in this too. You have to block it. you know, to before you frame it. And you want to be careful even with a blocked piece. Like when you frame it, you start, you know, top and bottom and, you know, folding over. So it's almost like stretching it. So, you know, typically if this was like a real needle point, when it's done, you know, it would be, you'd wet it, dampen it. And then getting these edges, you'd start folding them over or securing them to a backing or a frame. So you'd start here on the sides and then you do top and bottom, and then you work your way around in these opposing points to get it to lay, to make sure it's stretched evenly and to get it to lay flat. I don't know how that works with this plasticky stuff. I mean, it has zero give. It doesn't, you know, if you take a piece of like traditional embroidery or needlepoint canvas and do this with it, it'll have some give because it is truly woven and not like punched out or molded. Like I'm truly curious to know like what is the manufacturing process to make this? Because when you look at it, it looks like it's an over and under situation. It truly, I mean, I feel like there's some kind of like literally mold that they would inject this plastic in or something. I don't know. I really can't wrap my head around how it's made. But in any event, I guess they don't need to give you those like proper stretching instructions because this will not have any stretch. And it will not contract at all, no matter how hard you pull on the yarn. Because in a traditional needlepoint, if your tension is bad, like if all your stitches are really tight, it will pull in the weave of the canvas. So I don't know. Again, we'll have to see. This one I suspect will make me angry. It's already made me angry. So yeah, also, they have this support contact here. It's Michael's Customer Care, 1-800-Michaels. I have not really given much thought to it, but I'm kind of like, if I called that number and asked a question about this, I don't know that they necessarily have, I don't know if they necessarily have any advice for me. We'll see. Here's another, this is interesting. So there's a warning on here. Warning, contains a functional sharp point. Because there's needles in this. I don't remember. Does the punch needle say that? Because there certainly is a sharp point there. Yep. But the thing is, like, it's not it's not at the beginning. It's sort of as an afterthought here on at the end of things. It's where it fit. This is why kits are so interesting to me, is you know, in looking at these multiple crafts, what is the consistency or differences between all of this? And, you know, have they truly given the kit buyer everything that they need to be successful? And, you know, on its surface, that's like, it was the pattern written well? Are all of the materials included? But when you think about the fact that, you know, some of these materials are, you know, they're plastic. They're not wool. They're not, you know, these more traditional materials. So like the instructions might be a little bit different. You know, because there's things you don't have to worry about or things you do have to worry about. It's interesting. So, all right. I'm going to put all of this away and we're going to look at the very last thing. Oh no, I'm sorry. We have two things to look at, but I will be quick on these. The one, I have not given this a whole lot of time yet. This is the bead embroidery kit. And it was a little different than I expected it to be. So first of all, from a from a merchandising standpoint, from a product merchandising standpoint, this thing's a hot mess. This bag is huge. It doesn't, like, it's supposed to stand up, and because I ordered it online, it was like all swooshed and stuff. But aside from that, you know, forget the merchandising. I'm not Michaels. I don't have to worry about that. It's a really good bag. Remember I said these bags have like they're almost like the sort of bags like you'd have like a travel, your travel toiletries case or something. It's like a really good, heavy, like almost rubbery plastic. So I think it's very sturdy. I am looking forward to using this bag for something else. But I will just show you quickly what this looks like. So first of all, very similar to the diamond art. You've got all of these little packets of beads, and they're bead mixes. So you've got like bugle beads and sequins and seed beads, and a few like kind of chunky shapes. So just sort of like, this is just stitching in like big clumps. I don't think that, you know, it's kind of no rhyme or reason for it. Just make it look pretty. So this is the picture. It's already pre-printed on there, and you're just meant to just stitch all of those beads on here. It's much smaller than I thought it would be. So there's that, which I thought was really like, oh, it's disappointingly small. And then you end up with this huge honkin', I can't even get it out of here, embroidery frame. This is huge. I mean, comparatively for this little project. And then you have this felt backing. It's a sticky felt backing. And I read the instructions, and what it's essentially telling you to do, you know, you hoop this thing up, you do all your bead stitching, and then you leave it hooped, and you go around the back, and you take a running stitch to cinch all of the loose bits, you know, to the back, and then you peel and stick this thing on the back, and then you're gonna, you know, display this in the hoop. And I'm like, ew. No, I don't like that at all. I don't have a problem with, you know, when people display their, you know, embroideries or cross stitches or whatever in a hoop. You know, I mean, I've seen like small quilted pieces in hoops. I've done a couple of pieces and displayed them in the hoop. But I painted the hoop. They were nicer hoops that I've seen people use. In this case, this is just kind of a janky plastic hoop. And it looks so much like the type of hoops that you use for free motion embroidery. You know, it does not look like something that I would display. It looks like a tool. So, we'll see. I will not be finishing this thing as a as a wall hanging with this horrible sticky felt back. Like, no thank you. I think that was a miss. That was definitely a swing and a miss. And I think that the instructions are a little bit generic. You know, they're basically telling you that, you know, they do give you some nice illustrations on how to do these stitches with different beads. Like how are you capturing the beads onto the fabric? You know, but beyond that, it's just like, you know, string some beads, stitch them down. Like that's pretty much it. I also found some pretty significant typos in this one. So they didn't copy edit it very well. And I'm not really not one to throw stones, because I'm terrible at copy editing my own work. That's why you get somebody else to do it for you. Just an FYI, Michaels. So I don't know. We'll see about this one. The final one, of course, you guys, is our horrible, horrible baboon. This poor creature. Like I said, he's kind of scary looking. He's weird looking. I kind of feel like in stores people will look at this and go, oh, no thank you. You know, it's all the same materials as the owl, you know, with the colors being appropriate. It's that soft chenille yarn, which is very nice and soft. You know, okay, crochet hook, tapestry needle, etc. Stuffing in here. All right, there's the fringe. I have not looked at this in detail. You know, we looked at the owl, and the owl had something you were supposed to cut out freehand without a pattern and stitch it on. This, I would say the instructions here look a little better. We've got a lot of steps here. I think side by side with the owl instructions, this has more. You know, this is still saying intermediate skill level, knowledge of crochet is required, although all of the crochet stitches are shown. Yeah, I think I'm gonna make this guy first. I'm gonna give him a shot this weekend. The owl looks like it is going to frustrate me. This one looks like it could frustrate me as well. Yeah, we'll see. You know what? And I just realized there is aluminum wire in here. What on earth is that used for? I'm scrolling around here, looking. What is this used for? Let's see. Sewing and stuffing. I don't know. What would he be used for? Let's see. Maybe does it go in his feet or his legs or something? Huh. Nothing is jumping out to me that says use aluminum wire here. Any ideas, guys? What on earth would you use aluminum wire to make in the hair? And I mean, it's listed in the supply list. I see nothing that talks about this aluminum wire in the instructions. I was thinking maybe, like, again, like its arms and legs, perhaps, but no, I don't see anything there either. What the heck? All right. I'm not going to give this one a grade. We're gonna have to work on this to find out. That's strange. Did the owl have a... I don't have the owl down here right now. I think the owl's upstairs. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. That is very odd. I wonder what that is for. You know, I have made like way back in the day. I made some amigurumi, the little characters that you crochet. And that's kind of what I think of these as being, sort of similar to. I can't even begin to think what you would use aluminum wire for in those, other than, you know, like putting it in there to like make arms that bend or something. Or I don't know, maybe it's supposed to go around. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It has to be for the limbs, or maybe it's what they're calling his mane. This like big, you know, sort of triangular frame around his face. I'm wondering if it's supposed to go in there. Very strange. Well, this is the last bit I'm going to do on these. I will come back though with when they're finished. I will bring those back in. I won't spend, you know, this kind of time on them again, but yeah. I definitely some mixed feelings about all of this. I have discovered some new crafts that are intriguing to me. I have identified some problems. Yeah, so we will see. Wish me luck. But yes, I will report back on these when I get, something complete. Um, yeah. But I have to say, like, overall, I mean, the reason why, and I think I said this on Monday or last week, the reason why, I kind of got this idea to snag some of these kits, I did have a really nice discount. Um, but just, to kind of like, I love sewing. I don't know what I would do if I could not sew. I think, oh my gosh, what if I went blind? Or what if I, lost my arms or my hands or something happened and I, didn't have the dexterity? I would be very, very upset, very sad. But that said, sometimes the sewing that I do is not pleasurable at all because it becomes like production work for me, especially when I'm getting ready for a show. It becomes a job and it's not as enjoyable. And, I just kind of have to put it aside. And so I kind of had this idea of like, over the years, I've done so many crafts, I've tried so many things. I'm always eager to sort of jump back into any of those. And, like I think I've identified pretty well that cross stitch is just never going to be for me because I can't count worth a darn. Um, but some of these things, and I think I have found that some of these things indeed are very soothing crafts. Um, and so, that's what this was about, really. So we shall see. And I also, like I said recently, I think I'm gonna crack open my my kit hoard because I do have so many of them. And I think I'm gonna make some of my vintage kits. I have one set. I think they were made by Busilla, which Busilla is still. I'm pretty sure you can buy Busilla at least cross stitch things at like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Um, but I had these Busilla kits from back in it. They have to be either late 60s or early 70s, and it's the Wizard of Oz. And I have the full set. So it's Dorothy. I can't remember if she has a Toto or not with her. I think she does. And then it's the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. Um, so I think I want to make those. They're pretty easy to find, like complete unopened kits. So just in terms of having like a thing in my collection, I don't think I have a problem with opening the kits and like actually making the dolls. So that might be my next, my next thing I do after the Jonathan Adler things. um, and like I said, I originally had started collecting that stuff just out of curiosity and interest. And then I thought, oh, maybe one day I can write a book about vintage kits. And I'm like, it would be so hard. I mean, kit quilts, quilt kits, that alone, is like one topic. And, I mean, I've showed you the book I have and the woman that has, she has a whole membership site devoted specifically to those kits. So there's so many different types of craft kits and so many different kinds of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a handheld craft, things like where the crafter is like their hand is being held a little bit. So I would put cut and sew, in that category. Hey, Marianne. Oh, groceries. Oh my gosh. Went to the grocery store the other day. I don't know how my family manages to eat the food. Like so fast. Like we had a dozen eggs. Where did they go? um, but yeah, so this idea of just kits in general. Um, I think and maybe it's like more from a sociological standpoint of how people approach kits and why they use kits, and did a kit lead you to crafting, adopting a particular handcraft, as your hobby, so on and so forth. Those are all the things that keep like spiraling around in my mind. So I figured I will never come to any conclusions unless I think I get my hands dirty in the kits and actually make some of the things. Um, so, well, that said, let us jump into our Averil Colby. And I have, let's see, move my scene around here, because we were looking at tools. This is where we left off. She was talking about the templates and the papers here, so that's what this is. So, as a reminder, we are reading Patchwork by Averil Colby, which was published in 1958. She is a British quilter, historian, collector, writer, etc. I think this book is proving to be pretty good. So we are on chapter 3, which is tools and equipment, and we only got a couple pages in the other day. So we left off. I had just finished talking about papers, and I think it was interesting what she said about papers is, today, we could pretty much use any kind of paper, but back in the day, they were using, bills of sale, trade advertisements, letters. I personally, in some antique English paper piecing that I have that's unfinished, they're ledger pages, certainly. So that is what we left off at. So chapter 3, needles. Looked at a few of those today. So needles. Needles should be comparatively fine according to the materials. Patchwork seams need to be closely joined, and this is done most effectively with a fine needle. Size 9 or 10 is generally suitable. Some workers prefer between needles, being shorter than the ordinary sharp. They work more quickly and are less liable to bend. It is often a source of pride if a favorite needle will last out the whole work when it will have acquired a bend suited to the hand of the worker. Some quilters consider a needle as not in perfect condition until it is curved. I might be one of the only people that feels this way. I do not like it when my needles bend. How do you guys feel about it? For those of you that do hand work, put there in the chat. How do you feel about your bent needle? I think I would probably include my mother in this. I know a number of people that are like, oh, I love it when I get that curve in my needle. It's just perfect. I just don't like it. I don't know why. It just bothers me. Like, I can't get the needle like oriented in the right direction. I feel like, it always wants to, I don't know. I think I'm probably the only person that feels that way. Okay, moving on from needles. Pins. Pins for all processes of applied work and patchwork need to be smooth and sharp, most especially when the materials are cottons with a delicate finish or silks. Silk dressmaking pins are suitable for most heavy kinds of materials, such as casement and linen, but they should not be left to rust in the pieces. Brass pins are most satisfactory. Very short-length types known as lills, Lills, pins, or lillikins, Lillikins, can be used in small patches and fine work, but brass lace pins are suitable for all kinds of material and are supplied in all grades. Now, that is something interesting, and I will say I've got a few things, just in my collection of needlework tools. Once upon a time, and I would say probably many of you here can relate to this. Once upon a time, you get all kinds of pins. You could get, glass head pins, and you get flathead pins. And, the brass flathead pins would come on those kind of long sheets, and they were, stuck in little rows, and you would just pull them out as you needed them. You can't buy pins like that anymore. Pretty much the pins that you could buy at Joann before they closed down were by Dritz. I cannot even picture just plain flathead pins, although I'm sure they had them. but they would have been in one of those plastic boxes. The other types of pins that they carried were just garbage. They, over in the quilting section, they would have like the glass head quilters pins that were okay. Like they would be a Fawn Porter brand, or like there was another brand there. But over on like the regular old sewing, the pins would be more of like, to me, they're like novelty pins. They have like pearlized heads, these big pearlized heads, and they're the shaft of the pin itself is like big honking thing. Not fine at all. And then in terms of just sizes of pins, it just, you get what you get. And I really truly didn't know until I started collecting needlework tools that back in the day, you could buy boxes of pins in all kinds of sizes. Not just length, but actual like the heaviness of the shaft of the pin. Like I have some steel pins that they would have to have been tailor's pins and probably used for some type of very, very heavy wool or like a canvas because they're really beefy. And I could see where dressmaker's pins could bend or break, trying to pin together something. So these big long ones, big heavy, almost like think about it like what we have today, like a T-pin, but put just a flat head top on that. Like that's what I'm talking about. Um, I'm trying to think like as far as T-pins, where I see those are often in like with the knitting and crochet things because people will use them when they block, if you knit a sweater or something lacy, you block it, and you use T-pins for that. But as a general rule, I can't think of anywhere other than like a quilting store or a specialty shop where you would go in and see like a whole bunch of different kinds of pins. And with Joanne gone, I don't even know what Hobby Lobby and Michaels have. Hobby Lobby has their own brand. And it's not super good. It's, the quality is not there. And Michaels, I'm not sure. I haven't looked in that section in a very long time. So everything that she is talking about here has gone, I think it's just kind of become extinct. So moving on from pins, thread. Linen sewing thread was used in all the early patchwork, some of it made from flax grown and spun in this country, and especially in some of the eastern counties and in Dorset. Dorset workers say they never use any but the local linen thread from Bridgeport. Fine linen thread can be used for herringbone stitched applique, and it is advisable to use it also for knotting or tying. Meaning, I would think meaning like a tied comforter kind of thing. If you've ever felt linen thread, it's coarse. It's a little coarser and heavier than cotton thread, but it is so strong. Oh my gosh! Like, you think about like you can reel some cotton off of a cotton spool and just pop it, right? Like it's easy to break the thread. Try do that with linen thread. You will cut like literally right through your finger because it is strong. Linen and cotton applique is hemmed with cotton thread. Sewing silk is more appropriate for loop stitch or buttonholing. Silk thread is used in lightweight silk materials, but fine cotton is more suitable for heavy silks and satins and for velvet. All kinds of silk and metal threads are used for embroidery in crazy work. Odds and ends from other work are often saved for the purpose. Most cotton patchwork is sewn with cotton, white for all light colored pieces and black for the dark shades. For joining black or dark colors to white, a black thread is less noticeable than white. Thickness of thread varies according to the materials, but sewing cottons numbering from 60 to 100 will suit most kinds. And that's interesting how she says 60 weight. Like 60 weight is actually finer than what our most standard cottons are today. Now, if you use Aurifil or Superior, like they have like a real gradation of the sizes. Like they have products that go from like, 50 to all the way to 100. But generally what you see is 50 weight, 80 weight. I want to say sulky they don't actually do 50 weight. I think it's 60 weight. So I think I could be wrong about that, but nonetheless, I mean, some of this is not consistent at all. But if you're just going to pick up like regular old sewing machine thread, that's probably closer to a 30 weight sometimes. It's heavier. Um, and I mean, really, what you need to remember is the larger the number, the finer the thread. And those 80 weights are used for applique because it's a fine thread. You'll pull it, it'll sink right in. One thing that's interesting, hand sewing on this bicentennial piece. It's a poly cotton, and I don't know what the percentages are. The fabric that I ordered, I think, is 65 cotton, 35 poly. I looked at some other ones where the polyester was higher. It was like 60-40, and I think I even saw one that was like 70-30. So this very well could be like a high polyester. It is shredding the thread. I not thinking when I stitched the Georgia Star, I wasn't thinking. I had just grabbed, what I had like sitting there in my little sewing station, and I'd used cotton thread on this one. And oh my gosh, it shredded that cotton thread in no time. And it wasn't on an applique cotton. It was probably like a 50 weight. Now this, I'm now using a poly cotton, like just a Coates and Clark. It's actually out of my big bin of vintage threads, but it's polyester, so it's in just fine condition. It is still shredding that. I can't stitch with a very long piece for very long that it doesn't start to get like, frazzly. So that's kind of a learning experience for me. I've worked with vintage materials a lot, but I guess it just occurs to me that almost all the vintage materials I work with are cotton or wool. It is, I certainly have done some stuff with like polyester double knit. That's kind of a different category of itself. But just your regular old like poly cotton broadcloth is not good for handwork. And it is terrible on thread. I was really surprised. And I do a technique with needle turn where I do, you kind of do your stitch, you catch your fabric, but I don't pull the thread all the way through for that very reason. Because if you pull your thread through every time, you're putting more and more stress and friction on the thread. But if you just do these short stitches and you only pull your needle out just long enough, you give yourself just enough thread to kind of put another stitch in and another stitch in. And you can do that for 4 to 6 stitches and then pull it through, and you kind of have to be careful. You put your thumb over it so you don't tangle the thread. And so I am stitching like that, and even stitching like that, where my thread is pulled all the way through, like maybe every 5 stitches, it is still just chewing the the thread up. It's pretty interesting. So we'll see when I'm done. So done with thread, scissors. 2 pairs of scissors are needed. 1 pair very sharp for cutting material and another for paper cutting, as paper destroys the cutting edge of scissors. A razor blade in a holder or a seam ripper is better than scissors for undoing seams. I think that is very good advice. All right, moving on to chapter 4. Geometrical shapes and patterns. Now this is really interesting because I want to say, I'm flipping forward here. Somewhere here in this book, she gives the instructions for, it's not in this chapter, it's in another chapter. She gives the instructions for going from like a basic, like you create a circle shape and how you convert that, or a square shape, how you convert that into a hexagon, an octagon, a diamond, etc. Ginny Beyer produced a book that also went through those steps, and it's really an interesting process. And once you know the math, it's all geometry based math, but once you know how to do it, if you can remember, because it's complicated in that there's many steps, but you can draft all of these different shapes to the size you want, and so that they all fit together, just using one measurement. You start with one measurement. And I think that is so fascinating and so cool. I'm not a math person. Math just gives me like, But that piece of geometrical math it's so cool. It's really interesting how it all works out. Okay, so chapter 4, geometrical shapes and patterns. Geometrical shapes have been used to make patterns in most handwork and are used as a surface decoration in some kinds, such as embroidery, pottery, and quilting, or are built into the fabric, as in weaving, mosaics, or patchwork. Quilting and patchwork patterns are closely allied, and both are influenced by embroidery design. The connection between patchwork and embroidery is more marked in freehand applique than in mosaic patterns. Okay. Patchwork and quilting patterns often come together in the same quilt, and there are many shapes which are mutual to both. The most common are the square, the diamond, and the shell patterns. Other mutual patterns are found in applied work. So, I have a new picture to show you. Hexagon and diamond shapes are popular in English patchwork, and most mosaic patterns are made from one or both of them. The octagon patch is not as popular. It cannot be joined in a pattern without the addition of other shapes, generally squares. And this restricts the number of patterns which can be made from it. So what she's saying is, like, you can make a completely solid design using a hexagon. You know, they fit together, they tessellate together in, infinity. You could just keep going and keep adding them. However, let me move me so you can see. This shape, there's no way to put these together in a way that goes on forever because of the angles involved. You have to put that square in there at some point. What's interesting is, I think it was my grandfather's bathroom. My grandparents had an ensuite bathroom, and it was just the toilet and sink. It didn't have a shower in it, but the tile on the floor was octagons with squares in the middle, and it was black and white. And I remember when I was little, just, going in there and just sitting and looking at the tiles. And the tile in their other bathroom was pink and white, and it was a completely different pattern. And like, I kind of feel like that is what is always in my head when I think about these patterns and how they go together. It's always like that tile, those bathroom tiles from when I was a kid was, like, I guess my first, like, where I was paying attention, where I noticed, like, oh, this is how these things work. It's how they work together. Pentagons must also be combined with other shapes to give a flat surface, as pentagonal patches only will not lie flat when joined. And that you can exploit that by, pentagons. You also, again, like she's saying with the octagons, to make it lay flat, you have to add other shapes. But even so, you can add other shapes and make a beautiful round ball with all of these shapes. And I think I mentioned that was the Jenny Beyer book that I have, and how all of these shapes go together, and they can create a very flat surface, or they can create this beautiful, perfectly round surface. The addition of hexagons or diamonds or both is needed to make a quilt pattern. This is specific to pentagons. Triangles, whether long and narrow or short and broad, are in many traditional patterns and are found with and without the addition of other shapes, such as squares, hexagons, and diamonds. There is no standard measurement for any shape. The size of the patches is an individual choice, and it varies in proportion to the size of the work. A quilt needing a comparatively large patch and a pincushion, a correspondingly small one. Very early patchwork was made of square and rectangular pieces, and is likely that all shapes with straight sides were made by folding and cutting squares of cloth. We've got another image. Curved patches would not be so shaped. A square folded edge to edge and cut will make two identical rectangles. If the fold is diagonal from corner to corner, the two halves will be identical triangles. Subsequent folding and refolding will make more and smaller squares, rectangles, and triangles, and so on. A square can also be converted into other shapes by folding down and removing triangular pieces from the four corners, and probably octagonal and hexagonal shapes were first arrived at in this way. Diamond and long hexagonal shapes, which is what you see up there, are likewise contrived by applying the same process to rectangles. Woven materials can be measured and cut by the line of the threads, and many simple patterns are made this way. Ordinary household objects, such as a wine glass, saucers, and coins, have been used for patterns with curving outlines. Some shapes have retained the names of the things from which they were taken, such as the wine glass and pennies in quilting. The key of a pair of ice skates was used for the template in one pattern illustrated. The semicircular shell or scale pattern is common to patchwork, quilting, and embroidery. In the last two, it is used as a background pattern. It is suggested that a variation of the shell with a slightly scalloped edge was taken from a biscuit or pastry cutter. It can be seen in the inner border of a silk quilt, and both of these we'll see later on. They're much further into the book. The hexagon. The hexagon is the most popular shape in English patchwork, and the patterns made from it, with or without other shapes, are characteristic of this country's work. And like if you've done English paper piecing or just really even seen it, it's almost always all hexagons. And here I see, nobody is starting a hexagon project generally by just going, I'm just going to draft a hexagon, and you buy the paper pieces and they are going to be quarter inch, half inch, full inch, inch and a half, and so on. And they are measured. There are two different measurements. There's point to point across this long part, and then there's the edge. And typically, I think, like if you buy packages from Paper Pieces, which is, the company that sells these pre-cut pieces of paper, I think all of their measurements are along the edge you would stitch. So, a half an inch, it's going to be bigger, like the literal measurement of the piece is going to be bigger than a half an inch, but the side will be a half an inch if that's the measurement of the hexagon. I think that's consistently how they do it. As a six-sided shape, three variations are found in the patterns. The first is the honeycomb, so familiar that the popular picture of a patchwork quilt is one made from these equilateral hexagons. They are often called honeycomb quilts. The second, a long hexagon, and generally called church window, fulfills its description, as does the coffin. But whereas this is used alone, church windows are often combined with squares or octagons or rectangles. So let's take a minute and look at this. So got the honeycomb, which we are really very familiar with, the church window, and the coffin. Except that doesn't... So the shapes of these coffins are not what's being shown here, because the points are, they're wider than they are tall. So that orientation is a little bit different. But definitely church windows and squares. I like this. This is pretty. But this is different than what is being shown here. Oh, because this is church windows. Duh. Yeah. So church windows is elongated along the pointy part, whereas coffin is elongated along the flat part. Therein is the answer. Okay. Yeah, I like this pattern better than this one on the right. Let's see. This is a border of rosettes linked by swags of colored patches. Oh, this would be interesting along the edge of a quilt. That maybe has a scallop, or you just take these all the way to the edge and bind them as is. when you use hexagons, if you take them all the way to the edge, you have a couple of choices. You can cut them flat, you know, so you're cutting off the points. So you trim them here. So you can see that. Or you can leave them as is and bind all the way around this. And I know that is challenging and time consuming, but if it's done well, it looks so cool. I've done some very small pieces that way. I've never bound a large quilt with hexagonal edges, but it can look really neat. The cope, made in 1954, is made largely of church windows, and they are contained in the Levens Hall quilt, which we'll see later. And the cope that she's talking about is this. Oops, one too far. So this is what she's talking about. And yes, indeed, yep, those are the church windows. Elongated. Okay. Also, a bed valance is made of coffins that we'll see later. Several names have been given locally to hexagon patches, especially in the West Country. Mrs. Hake, that would be Elizabeth Hake, we read her book, discovered them disguised as optigons, octicians, and sextanes. They are also known as sixes, and in many parts of the country are referred to as squares. That is interesting. So that's so strange. So a hexagon, but people have called them optigons. It sounds like kind of a miss. Oh gosh, what's the word that, like, when you mispronounce something? That sounds like kind of a misunderstanding of octagon. But octicians, that's weird. That's like it's like a combination of octagon and optician, or October and optician. Sextanes, I mean, sex, I think sometimes means six, so that makes sense to me. But to call them squares is very confusing, because that would be wrong. They're not squares. Good border patterns are made from honeycomb pieces in rosettes, and 3 are illustrated. So we looked at this last one, the rosettes. So she's talking about this, and then this one, and then there's one further along, as well as other arrangements in color. Star patterns made from hexagons are common. One illustrated is typical and is made of clear pink printed cottons outlined with black patches patterned with emerald green. Diamond-shaped arrangements are found in many patterns, and hexagons are used with ingenuity to make the hearts and kisses, as well as initials, in the marriage coverlet that we'll see illustrated later. Baskets of hexagons in Mr. White's coverlet took a whole evening to figure out. The diamond. Diamond shapes vary according to the size of the apex angle and whether they are to be used with squares or hexagon patches. So I guess the apex angle, I guess, is it this one? That would be like the most, the tightest angle, the smallest angle. The diamond found in most patterns is that based on a hexagon. And so that's what she's talking about here. It is known also as a lozenge. You know, that's interesting, because I think for a very long time, I thought of the church window as a lozenge. But I do know more and more I have seen where they're calling this long diamond a lozenge. And she's confirming that here. So I think it was just a misunderstanding on my part for that church windows version. The well-known box pattern is made from 3 diamonds in dark, medium, and light shades of many colors, joined into a hexagonal shape and giving the 3-dimensional effect of a cube. Well, let's look at that. That's what she's talking about right here. So the effect of a cube, of which the top and 2 sides only can be seen. And obviously this, like, you have to eliminate kind of the rest of it in your mind and just look at, this is the top and this is the two sides. It almost creates like an optical illusion, because you could kind of look at this, and at face value it's just kind of a zigzag of you know, alternating colors, and then you have this other color in there as these diamonds, sort of almost like a stripe. But when you isolate a set of three, you see that it creates the optical illusion of a cube. The box pattern has been used as a border and as an all-over design from the beginning of the 19th century. And she mentions it's used in the border of the quilt that's on the jacket of the book. About 70 years later, curtains and cushions in silk were the essence of good taste, and a cushion in an arrangement of blue, cream, and white silk boxes is illustrated later in the book. Many patterns are made from diamonds and hexagons. Stars and diamonds are shown in a coverlet made otherwise of hexagons, and a design in black, gray, and white was used for a cushion cover. Outlining or framing of rosettes with a single line of diamonds was done in 18th century work, and a coverlet in the Victoria and Albert Museum shows this arrangement in colored rosettes and dark colored diamonds on a white ground. The applique border is also outlined with lines of diamond patches. The chintz coverlet made by the Austen family is made in diamonds of different sizes. So we'll see that one later. I thought this was interesting how, because, you know, you can take your rosette and you can butt it up against, you know, you have to shift it, right? Like you can't have them, you can't have the centers in a row like this if you don't have these diamond and triangle pieces in there. But if you leave out the diamond triangle pieces and shift, you know, one way or the other, then this, you know, pointy bit tessellates into there. And, you know, again, you have a flat piece. But for the rosettes to stand out, you have to do this. And I like that. I like being able to isolate the rosette and to see it versus having it just kind of blend together. There's also so with Grandmother's Flower Garden, you typically see this rosette, and then the hexagons that are plugged in there around the rosette are done like in solid green, and that's kind of becomes the, like, quote unquote, the garden. But it's still all hexagons tessellated into each other. So to have them stand out like this, I like this layout better. And then this star pattern, using only diamonds, is kind of brilliant, I think. You know, when you look at it, it looks, you wouldn't, at least my brain doesn't immediately go, oh, well, that's 12 diamonds, right? Yeah, 6 and 6. I think most people don't look at it that way. They look at it like, oh, there's a star, and then there's these pieces around it that make it into a hexagon. But indeed, it is 12 diamonds. And that's pretty amazing that geometry works that way, you know? So, the diamond shape, which is based on a square, is generally called the long diamond, and the star pattern it makes has 8 points. A well-loved American Star of Bethlehem pattern is in the Victoria and Albert Museum collection of quilts, but the long diamond in English patterns is generally used with squares and triangles. It is found sometimes in cloth table cover patterns and in some North Country star quilts, as illustrated in traditional quilting, where it is used as a center pattern. So this is what she's talking about here. And I mean, this is getting, to me, this is like getting into like really more complex stuff, because you have diamonds that are not equilateral around, you know, they're not equal on all edges. They've got shorter edges in order to accomplish this, you know, these longer points and things. And then you have to get different shapes to fill in there if you're gonna have it based on a hexagon. There is a very well-known hexagon artist, quilt maker. Her first name is Katja, and I want to say her last name starts with an M. And she wrote a couple of books, and it's essentially taking the hexagon, our standard hexagon, and cutting it in different ways, and literally piecing a piece of fabric and then cutting it to a hexagon shape. So, this is an example of something that she might have accomplished. But in this case, that line right there is the edge of the hexagon. So this is coming out of the hexagon shape. It's like, moving past the borders of the hexagon shape. But that's what this reminds me of, is dividing a hexagon up into, multiple pieces to give a different look. And this is more of it that she's talking about. Let's see. Smaller stars are also used in block patterns. An illustration of the star pattern in blocks is shown much further into the book. And although in this quilt the stars are made from squares and triangles, the effect is the same as when the pattern is made from long diamonds. This one is getting much more complex, though. And she's really talking about, she's kind of referencing the other quilts. She hasn't necessarily talked about this here. So I guess, like, comparing this, so much more complex, to this. That complexity is just one step back. Like many other shapes, which begin by being equilateral, diamonds have been altered and adapted from time to time to make a special pattern. And let's see, she's talking about, okay, yeah, so she's talking about this illustration here, these altering the diamonds to accomplish something specific like this. In some star patterns, a second row of patches shortened at one apex has been added to make a double star. And, again, this is what she's talking about here. This kind of pattern is found under many names in American quilts, but the English descriptions keep to star, double star, or treble star. Treble, not trouble, treble. Double stars are made with either 12 or 16 points. Shortened diamond patches are used for 4-pointed stars, as shown in the pattern of the cross on the chasuble, which is going to be later on, and in a border pattern. And that's this border pattern she's talking about. And so those are those, like, shortened on one end diamonds. The triangle. Two kinds of triangle are used. One with a short baseline is known as the half diamond or pyramid, and the other with a long base, usually called the long triangle. Long triangles can be made either by dividing a square diagonally or by having a diamond lengthwise. I'm thinking through this. So this is interesting. This is where she's talking about, like, so these are pyramids. And when it's used on a border like this, it's called a dog's tooth. But interestingly, this is a pieced dog's tooth. When I think I showed you guys how to do an applique dog tooth, which I've seen in a lot of antique quilts, at least here on the East Coast. I think maybe it was probably regional, is my guess. But I've definitely seen a lot of quilts around here that have that applique dog tooth. And that is not, I mean, it is taking some of these geometry, it's thinking about some of the geometry, but it's a lot more of, like, kind of fudging it a little bit, eyeballing it than this, cutting the actual triangles out. Pyramids are used many times in borders when they usually make the dog's tooth pattern, as in a a chair cover illustrated, North Country strip quilts in zigzag or tree everlasting. patterns are often made in triangles of calicos in 2 colors, pink and blue, lilac and yellow, red and white, and so on. Cloth table covers are made of pyramid arrangements, and the shape clearly took the fancy of Private Thomas Walker, as he made his quilt from this shape. We're going to get to see Thomas Walker's quilt eventually. Pyramids are often used with hexagons and diamonds. Now, moving on to pyramids, windmills, and cotton reels. Patterns made of long triangles are common in all of her designs, especially the windmill, which is one of the earliest and most persistent patterns. It is made from identical squares of different colors, light and dark, or one color and white, which are divided diagonally and rejoined, one piece of each color, into squares. And that's what you see there at the top. Border patterns are also made this way, and this is what we see at the bottom. And the dogtooth pattern is also popular for applique work quilts. Another pattern is made when the triangles are rejoined in matching pairs, with the apex of each triangle meeting in the center of each square. And that's what she's talking about here on this strip. This pattern, sometimes called the cotton reel, formed the border of a silk quilt made about 1780 and was an all-over pattern in an immense coverlet of cottons, appropriately made by 6 Miss Cottons about 1790, meaning I assume sisters, that their last name was Cotton. The light and dark colors alternate in the adjoining squares. The basket is another old and well-known pattern made from triangles. The baskets are generally made separately and then applied to the squares in block quilts. It is made in one color, red, green, pink, yellow, or blue, and white as a rule, as the pattern depends on clear contrasts. The handle is a curved strip of material applied to the top of the basket. When flowers are added in the garden, and flower basket patterns, they also are applied. And she means applique here. The quilt illustrated has 42 baskets, which have been applied by machine stitching. I don't think she even is. Oh, it's on page 177, so we'll get there. So has 42 baskets, which have been applied by machine stitching. This is unusual and detracts a little from the appearance of the pattern. In Cumberland, the basket without the handle is known as the sugar bowl about 70 years ago. And I think I've seen that too. I think I've seen, if you knock the handle off, it looks just like it's like a vessel, a bowl of some sort. Many traditional star patterns are made from long triangles and squares. A straightforward arrangement of 2 triangles joined to each corner of a square is illustrated, and with the addition of smaller triangles to the edges of the first star, the pattern becomes the feathered star. And I think you can probably imagine what that looks like, because we've looked at that before. But just picture like a Star of Bethlehem, and then half square triangles around it, so you get that. It's almost like jaggedy. The illustrated quilt is made of pink zephyr gingham. I wonder what that is. Pink zephyr gingham and white calico, and the pattern is finished with a sawtooth border. So I am going to leave off there, and we will finish up the rest of this on Monday. I've still got quite a few pages here, a number of pages to go of different shapes. And she's going to get, it's odd, she's going to get to the pentagon at the end. She mentioned the pentagon in the beginning, but she does get to it in the end. So that is all for today. For this weekend, Jill and I have a Stitch and Glitch on Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, over on YouTube. So I hope you'll join us if you don't have anything to do. I don't know what this weekend's weather looks like. So, if it's raining or cold or beastly hot for you, then by all means come and join us. And I think that's everything for now. I will see you regular time on Monday. As a reminder, and I will remind you again on Monday, I will not be here the fall like a week from today, because I will be traveling to Massachusetts, and Jill and I will be going to Block Island, which is in Rhode Island, and I will have pictures for you. So, but yeah, I'll remind you about that. That's still a week off, so I'll remind you about that on Monday. So have a wonderful weekend if we don't see you at Stitch and Glitch on Saturday, and I'll be back on Monday. Bye, guys.